Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today's topic is on the Toronto Blue Jays. If you're new here, we talk about baseball on this channel, and I post breaking news when it happens. So if you like baseball, this is probably a good place for you. And also, thank you for all the recent support lately. It's very much appreciated. So, addressing the elephant in the room about the Blue Jays, what they need to do before spring training. Addressing the main part is obviously their pitching. Here are two guys on my screen that could obviously help their pitching. The Blue Jays said they want to get another impact arm behind Ryu to get a nice 1-2 punch in the rotation, which they need with other teams like the Yankees and the White Sox, who have lots of pitching, and the Blue Jays. The rotation is basically Ryu, Nate Pearson, who was on a pitching count this year, and then Robbie Ray, and then some other guys that are going to compete for spots. So they definitely need at least two more arms to be a solid contender in the playoffs. So I think the Jays should go out and get Kyle Hendricks from the Chicago Cubs, a team that's in the not really rebuilding, but they're not afraid to trade some pieces. They traded Darvish at the beginning of this offseason, and they actually traded Darvish for not like a lot when you think about it. For a player of his caliber, they didn't really trade him for a lot. So they could definitely go out and get Kyle Hendricks from the Chicago Cubs. They could even go into the free agent market. There's still arms like Odorizzi, Paxton, Walker, so there's definitely still some arms out on the market. They can go out and get Paxton, and one thing they have to do is I think they should trade Tanner Roark. Tanner Roark is competing for the fifth spot, and if he doesn't make it, then he's going to be a $13 million bench warmer, which I just don't see any point in keeping Tanner Roark around. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of trade value because he makes $13 million, and he doesn't produce the same skills as someone who makes $13 million should produce. So it'll probably take a prospect and Roark to get rid of him, like the Yankees did with Ottavino. They traded Ottavino to the Red Sox with a prospect because the Red Sox wouldn't take Ottavino just by himself. So they'd probably have to sign a prospect with Roark to another team to get rid of his contract, and then they can go and make another move and get another pitching piece into their mix. I want to say the same thing about another player, but I'll say that later. Still talking about the pitching for now. If you get rid of Roark, then and then you sign Paxton and have Hendricks, then you can have Ryu Hendricks as your 1-2 punch. And Hendricks is pretty underrated. He's a very good pitcher. So you have Ryu, Hendricks, Paxton, Pearson, and Ray. And then if Pearson goes over his pitch count, you can always use Steven Matz or Anthony Kay. And they've even discussed using Ryan Borucki as a starting piece in the rotation maybe later on. So it gives them more flexibility, and they have a lot more depth if they get two starting pitching pieces. So I definitely think they should do that. Talking about their bullpen, I think their bullpen is already in a pretty good place. They've been linked to Trevor Rosenthal. I do think they should sign Rosenthal to maybe a 1 or 2 year deal. Then they would have a good 7, 8, and 9 setup. They'd have Dolis in the 7th inning spot, and Dolis was very solid last year. Then they'd have Yates. Hopefully he stays healthy, because when he is healthy, he's lights out. And then Rosenthal in the closing spot. And Rosenthal has actually found his command the last couple of years, so he could definitely be a solid closer for them. Even if they don't get Rosenthal, they're still in a pretty good spot with Yates and Dolis. They still have arms like Chatwood and Kay and Borucki and other pieces like that. I think I think their bullpen is very similar to the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays have Anderson and a bunch of other arms on there, but other than Anderson, there's no really household names in their bullpen. It's just a bunch of guys who go out there, give it their all, and they produce results. So it works for Tampa Bay. I'm not saying it would work for every team, but maybe Toronto could try to do the same thing as Tampa Bay and make the best out of their arms, even though they're not household names. But getting Rosenthal and Yates and Chatwood and Dolis should definitely be a huge start for the Jays, and I think that would complete their bullpen pretty much. And then if they really fell into trouble, they have a couple of long relievers like Chatwood, Kay, and Borucki and stuff like that, so they'd be in a good spot with their bullpen and rotation on that front. Moving over to the offensive side of the table, the Blue Jays have to trade Randall Grichuk. I know there's lots of Jays fans out there that aren't too happy about Randall Grichuk, and I'm gonna be on that train as well, because right now Randall Grichuk is competing for a DH spot, and Randall Grichuk makes $10.5 million. I don't think someone that makes that much should be competing for a spot, but he's not going to produce better than Hernandez. He's not going to replace Springer, and he's probably not going to replace Gurriel Jr. And at the DH spot, Tellez and Guerrero are going to be splitting time at DH and first base. So Tellez is going to be competing for the DH. Alejandro Kirk is going to be competing for the DH. Randall Grichuk and maybe some other bats. Maybe they make another bat acquisition before the beginning of the spring training starts. So I think they should trade Randall Grichuk. They're just spending too much money on him for him to be competing for a spot, and he's only going to play around 33% of the time, so I just don't see them hanging on to that contract. Even if Grichuk does not get moved this season, he definitely gets moved next season because there's some prospects like Austin Martin, and there's going to be other bats knocking on the door, and the free agent market next year is really insane. Like, there's crazy names out there. There's Lindor, Baez, Seager, Yelich. The list just keeps going. So the Jays can definitely trade that contract and get either a better bat or a pitching piece in return, and also save money for next year. Looking at one bat that the Blue Jays could go out and acquire, I was looking. The Pittsburgh Pirates have been in sell mode this offseason. They are in a rebuild right now, and they still have Adam Frazier on the team that they were looking to shop. Now, Adam Frazier is another utility man. He probably wouldn't play anywhere like all the time because the Jays don't have any space, but even though he'd be a bench piece, he'd still find his way into the lineup a lot because whenever someone needs a rest, he can play anywhere. So it gives them lots of flexibility, and he is also a left-handed bat, something that the Blue Jays sort of lacked, or they do lack right now. They only have two lefties in their lineup, so Adam Frazier could be a good fit on that part. And also, he's a utility man, so he can play anywhere, and it just gives them depth. So I think that is a good move to make. And he only makes $4.3 million. So if they really don't like him and how he produces on the team, they can just non-tender him next year because he's only on a one-year deal. And they can do the same with Steven Matz. If he doesn't perform to their liking, they can non-tender both of them and look somewhere else. So I definitely think they should make that move with the Pirates. I think they should get Paxton and Hendricks and Rosenthal for their pitching staff. I think they should trade Tanner Roark because he makes lots of money to be pretty much a bench warmer. I mean, he did not have a very good year last year. He gave up like 6 home runs in one game against the Yankees, so that's never a good sign. And then they should trade Randall Grichuk because he makes too much money to play 33% of the time. I just don't see it happening. And he might even play less than that if Tellez is performing well and Guerrero is also performing well and everyone's performing well. Then he doesn't have a home in the lineup because Guerrero will DH, Tellez will play first base because you need to have the productive bats in the lineup, and he'll just be on the sideline making $10 million. So I don't see that making sense. So they should trade Roark and Grichuk, go out and get Rosenthal, Hendricks, Paxton, and then they'll be in a pretty good spot. I thought that they should maybe get some catching help because Danny Jansen didn't perform all the best last year, but I think they're in a good spot right now because if Kirk can come through and hit and Jansen's good defensively, I think they'll be in a good spot. And they have a pretty good prospect, a catching prospect coming up in a few years in Moreno. So I think they're just going to hang on until Moreno comes up and is ready. And that's basically it for the Blue Jays, what they need to do before the spring training starts. And I think they can do some pretty good stuff with this roster that they have. If they add the pieces that I was talking about, they can do some good things, and it wouldn't cost them the world. So let me know what you think of this. Let me know what pieces you want the Jays to add before spring training. And thank you again for all the support recently. Let me know what videos you want to see in the future. If you want to see your team, what they should do before spring training, just let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.